Book Burning 2.0, The Dangerous Trend of Rewriting and Banning Literature, written and narrated by Benny James. I have always believed in the power of words, from the bedtime stories we read to our children to the philosophical texts that inspire the greatest thinkers of our time. Books have always been the cornerstone of our cultural and intellectual heritage, representing human thought, emotions, and ideas in their purest form. Yet in recent years, we have witnessed an alarming trend of rewriting or banning books deemed too offensive or politically incorrect. This is a dangerous and ill-conceived practice that undermines our freedom of expression, intellectual diversity, and cultural legacy. The latest of these attacks comes with the news that Roald Dahl's beloved children's books are being analysed and rewritten by quote-unquote sensitivity readers to be less offensive and more inclusive so they, quote, can continue to be enjoyed by all today, unquote. Roald Dahl was a British author who wrote popular children's books that have been translated into over 60 languages and sold over 250 million copies worldwide. He is best known for his quirky, dark, and whimsical stories, such as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, The BFG, and James and the Giant Peach. Dahl's books are beloved by children and adults alike for their creative plotlines, memorable characters, and witty humour. His work has influenced generations of readers and writers, and his contributions to children's literature have earned him a place as a cultural icon. Some of the recent changes to Dahl's legendary stories by the so-called sensitivity readers include the following. Augustus Gloop from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is no longer described as fat and is instead enormous. Oompa Loompas, who were once small men, are now small people. Miss Trunchbull from Matilda, described as a most formidable female, is now a most formidable woman, while her great horsey face is now just her face. Fantastic Mr. Fox's 3 sons have become daughters. The big friendly giant in the BFG no longer wears a black cloak, and characters cannot turn white with fear, as the words black and white have been completely erased. They even went so far as to include additional passages in the books that Dahl himself did not even write. For example, in The Witches, a passage describing the witches as bald under their wigs is now followed by a new line, quote, there are plenty of other reasons why women might wear wigs, and there is certainly nothing wrong with that, unquote. These are but a mere few of what is reported to be hundreds of changes across Dahl's entire body of work. The act of rewriting or banning books, in my view, is a form of intellectual theft that robs the original authors of their vision, creativity, and autonomy. When we take a book and change its contents to suit our own tastes, we are essentially erasing the author's voice and replacing it with our own. This not only violates the author's intellectual property rights, but also undermines the authenticity and integrity of the work. First and foremost, books are not timeless artifacts that represent some idealized version of reality. Instead, they are products of their time and place, shaped by the social, political, and cultural contexts in which they were written. This, in part, is what makes them special. But it also means that many of the books we read today may contain ideas, values, or attitudes that are no longer compatible with our current sensibilities. However, this does not mean that we should rewrite or ban such books. Instead, we should acknowledge their historical significance and examine them critically, using them as a lens to understand our past and present. Moreover, rewriting or banning books in this way eliminates the diversity and variety of human thought and expression that is crucial to our intellectual and cultural enrichment. When we decide that certain books or passages are offensive and must be erased from our cultural memory, we are essentially creating an overly sensitive and homogeneous culture, devoid of critical thinking, nuance, and complexity. This is a recipe for intellectual stagnation and cultural decay, as it stifles the creativity and innovation that are hallmarks of a thriving society. It is also important to note that the decision to rewrite or ban books deemed as offensive is highly subjective and often reflects the views of those in positions of power to make such decisions. In many cases, these small groups of individuals claim to speak on behalf of society, but in reality, they only represent their own agendas and biases. This means the books deemed offensive and targeted for censorship are often challenging the prevailing orthodoxy or exposing the flaws and injustices of the status quo. Many dictators and tyrants have gone down similar paths in the past, using censorship as a tool to control and manipulate their citizens. In Nazi Germany, for example, thousands of books were burned because they were deemed un-German or pro-Jewish. effectively erasing an entire nation's cultural and intellectual heritage. Similarly, in Communist China, books that challenged the official ideology of the state were banned, and their authors were persecuted, leading to a cultural wasteland that lasted for decades. The practice of rewriting or banning books is not only damaging to our cultural heritage, but also undermines our intellectual and personal freedom. When we restrict what we read and think, we limit our capacity for critical thinking and creativity. It is only by engaging with diverse perspectives and challenging our own assumptions that we can grow intellectually and personally. In conclusion, the dangers of rewriting or banning books are clear and present. We must resist the temptation to erase our cultural and intellectual heritage in the name of political correctness and sensitivity. Instead, we must embrace the diversity and variety of human thought and expression, acknowledging the historical significance of the books we read and using them as a tool to understand and improve our world. Only by doing so can we ensure that our cultural legacy is preserved and enriched for generations to come.